So when I got into this business, I got into it for the beer. Like I had this gross assumption that I would be slinging beer, and that would be my thing. I would come up with recipes, and then I would serve it, and that was what I thought the business was. And lo and behold, now I find myself to be more of an event coordinator than anything else. So if you're not consistently having events and good events, memorable events, or what you would refer to as, let's say, an experience. If you're not creating the right experience for your customer, it doesn't matter what you're serving and it doesn't matter how good it is.
Thank you for listening to Serves You Right. My name is Andrew, and if today is your first time tuning in, first of all, what took you so long? And second of all, I've worked in hospitality for the last 20 years. So that's restaurants, bars. I've done everything from bar back all the way up to general manager. And this show is all about things that people in the restaurant and hospitality world care about. So actual hospitality, the guest, lifestyle, food, beverage, wine, spirit, and in that note today, beer. So today I'm talking to Ralph Mandarino, the man behind Necromantic. It is a gluten-free exclusive brewery, and we get to talk about what it takes to brew gluten-free beer, why he started down that path, what inspired him, and his plans for the future. So if you have any interest in brewing, if you care at all about gluten-free products, or if you just want to know a little bit more about beer, this is one to listen to. Yeah. Ralph Mandarino, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So you actually found us. Tell me a little bit about how you got into the brewing world.
So it's an interesting story. So I have a celiac. It's an undiagnosed diagnosis, but I have all the symptoms of celiac disease. So I avoid gluten whenever possible, but I wasn't born that way. So I would say probably for the last 13 years, I've had to stay away from anything that contains wheat, rye, and barley. So I'm
All the
sure,
fun
as you
stuff,
know, and
yeah.
everyone listening, yeah, just about everything that's made on the market today has some variant of either wheat, rye, or barley. In most cases, a bunch of the mix. But so, anyways, I liked a cold beer on a hot summer day, much like right now I'm on Long Island and the sun is shining, so it's a beautiful day here. And sometimes you just want a nice cold beer, and I missed that. I was no longer able to have it. So a buddy of mine that come over and sometimes hang out with my family. I had at the time two small kids, and I would cook gluten-free food. But when you have small kids, it's like they can be your biggest critics, especially when it comes to food.
Yeah, they don't.
So
The players
one
tell you what you think. Yeah.
100%. And so I had to really get better at cooking gluten-free food because I didn't really know at the time what gluten-free meant. I had to do some research on it. And anyways, so he would come by, have some of the food, and he was like, "Hey, man, I can't tell the difference between your food and like something that would be gluten-free or not." So we got chatting, and he goes, "What we should do, we should screw around and make some beer. We should homebrew." And I was like, "Oh man, I don't know. Like, it's expensive. Like I said, I got the kids. New York is expensive to live in, and I was like, I don't know if I have the extra cash or the time or just the patience for something like that." So we let it sit for a couple of years. And then one day, I swear to you, I just woke up on New Year's Day, and it was one of those like reflective moments where I was like, what have I been doing with my life? Like, what am I actually doing for me? Because I really didn't have much hobbies. Everything I was doing was for the children. So I was like, something he was right. We should do that. And so that's how the journey began. We started to homebrew. And while we were brewing, we were watching horror movies. And we had gotten like a shitty dollar store curtain, a shower curtain, threw up a projector, got a vinyl player, listened to some records while we brewed and passed the time, and kind of chit chatted, got to know each other better like that. It was a really cool experience. And that led to, I thought, hey, how cool would this be? Like, it's just the two of us, but imagine if we did this with everybody. Like, we just invited everybody to my house and made beer, and that was the premise of the place. Was like, you designed it so it looked like your buddy's basement or your cousin's basement or like that, and you just come in to hang out and watch movies and have some delicious beer.
And thus was born Necromantic.
And thus was born Necromantic.
Nice. Yeah. No, so, for the listener at home, so I know a lot of people have heard about home brewing and maybe even dabbled, but that process, especially if you're doing it like start to finish the whole thing yourself, is not necessarily easy or quick. You kind of glossed over that, but I was
Yeah,
wondering if you
no.
could dig in just how long it takes to, say, brew one batch.
Sure. So for our intents and purposes, so my grain, we were using ancient grain.
Mhm.
So ancient grain is defined as rice, millet, buckwheat. We use flake quinoa. There's a couple of others, but those are strictly the ones that we were messing around with. So basically, it's an hour longer because it doesn't have the enzymes built in to convert starches into sugars.
That was going to be
So
another
while,
question.
you
Yeah.
know, that's a big reason also why wheat, rye, and barley are in things because they actually have that enzyme. So it's cheaper to manufacture and a little bit shorter on the time. So I would say roughly one batch would be like, start to finish, including like cleaning, and would be maybe like 4 to 5 hours.
Mm.
So it was an investment in time. I would say just brewing the batch of beer, like the boil was an hour, the mash process was 2 hours, but we also milled our own grains like that, so that added to the time. And you want to clean everything as quick as possible afterwards. You don't want things sitting around. The thing will grow mold faster than you can blink an eye.
Yeah, no, it's hard to really understand how quickly things can go bad. Even just like the tiniest little bit of the sugar water before it starts fermenting is like the ideal spot for bacteria to grow. It's like it's
Yeah,
purpose
it's
no,
wild.
which is why yeast grows so well in it too. It's its own. It's like a positive form of spoilage, one we like. Yeah.
Right. Yes,
Do you actually have to add enzymes, or are there enough in there for?
I do.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's glucoamylase that we put in there.
mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's the good thing about barley is, if it's germinated, it comes purpose made to make beer. I mean, it still takes a lot of work, but it's got those enzymes in
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
exactly.
Did you have to play around with the blend of different grains? Are you still playing around with
Oh
those
yeah,
flavors?
for sure. The nice thing was, so we were purchasing our grains from now like a supplier, but even then, there was a website. It was like a gluten-free homebrewshop.com or like that, and so they were kind of selling all this stuff. And the nicest part was, if you just did like a hint of research, you could see where the grains were coming from. In other words, there were only less than a handful of places in the country that grow certified gluten-free grains. So like even that process, the malting process in and of itself is a challenge for farmers because there are elements that you can't control. So in other words, in a wheat field or a barley field, when you're growing these crops, if we're growing something that's supposed to be gluten-free, such as millet or buckwheat, if you get a gust of wind, you can get some cross germination there.
Mm-hmm.
So really, it's got to be what they had done in Colorado when those guys did it. They were doing it like 25 miles north, south, east, west, nothing. Like it's just a plot of land in the middle of nowhere ish
Hermetically sealed
that's
by
gluten free.
distance. Yeah.
Right, like biodome.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something like that. So yeah, so because of that, point being is the growers, the farmers were actually really instrumental in explaining how to use the grain correctly. In other words, they're like, hey, listen, there's a finite amount of people in the world using our product. We want to grow that. So if we can teach people how to use it effectively, then why not? So they gave us, say, parameters around temperature, mashing, what grain would specifically do what to the beer, and then you go from there. And then, like you say, it's a little bit of trial and error. But I like to cook, as I said. So for me, this was just a very interesting scientific way of going about cooking, which was fun for me.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of like baking. There's a science to it. There's times. Yeah, you can't really. You can modify it a little bit, but if you go too far off, it's very easy to just end up with like barely boiled or just a bunch of ruined grains in water that just won't ferment. So you kind of have to have some sort of
Yeah.
plan. Yeah. Now I'm kind of thinking farmers with the grain too, because I'm more in the bar world, and I exist more
Sure.
in like hard liquor, and I'm thinking about how like there are no people that are giving say vodka seminars and like how to mix vodka, but people that are doing the up and coming stuff, like a lot of that, like how to mix with pisco, how to mix. So it's almost like
Oh yeah.
having that niche market because you might actually be like half their customer base. They really want you to succeed.
Right. Yeah. And it worked out for us because, again, that was always the aspiration for me personally.
Mm.
So it was like I knew we were going to do this. It was an undertaking and I was going to put in a lot of time and money, even though it was a hobby. But that's kind of who I am as a person. It's like, listen, if I'm going to invest this much of myself, then I want to know that there's some possibility on the back end of coming out of this thing with something else. And that something else was starting a brewery because I know, again, in a saturated market
Mm.
such as Long Island, New York. There's over 500 breweries. At its height, we had over 560 some odd breweries in New York. And of course, New York can be a large state if you're encompassing the whole state, which I am. But on the island itself, not even including the boroughs, so that does not include Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island. That doesn't include any of that. Just Nassau and Suffolk County had over 60 breweries.
Mm.
So what I always said, why are you coming to me? Why are you coming to us? If we're going to be a destination, there's got to be something to bring people in. And I wasn't sure enough at that time that the gluten-free was enough of a moneymaker to support the bills. So that's when we also encompassed the horror theme because we were doing that anyway. So it seemed very true to who we were because those are the movies we were playing on the projector were horror movies.
Got it. Yeah, I was wondering how the name came about, so that's good to know there. That's really cool. Yeah, you kind of ask yourself when you're starting a venture like this, like, does my area need Brewery 61?
Right.
But yeah, you're not just doing your classic West Coast IPA, maybe a wheat beer, maybe a Pilsner. You have something that does set you apart. Because I'm going to venture and guess that most of the other breweries in that area are not gluten free.
None. So just to be like clear, there's about only 20 in the world
Yeah.
that are dedicated gluten free. So at one point we were the only one from New York to Miami.
Which, yeah, is a pretty large part of the country there. I am curious because I'm not celiac. I eat gluten. If you have grain that is grown near wheat, like you said, where the wind can cross pollinate, can you detect that? Like, if you ate that, does it mess up your life? Like, I was wondering the
So there's
sensitivity.
actually there's definitely a test that I use test strips for liquid that can determine if there's gluten or cross contamination in there,
Hmm.
which is nice. But I always tell everybody I'm very sensitive to stuff, so I drink everything first to make sure who doesn't lick the spoon, right, when you're cooking something like that. So
Yeah.
it's but yeah, no, it can be, and again, it depends upon. So like I also learned in the world, like as far as celiac or gluten-free people, or gluten intolerant people, or gluten sensitivity people, there is a gamut. Not
Hmm.
everybody is built the same.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
some people like food. Let's a quick example for food. So like let's say French fries or potatoes. There's no gluten in that, but sometimes they use wheat starch when they're
In like
frying
every
the
fryer.
potato.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then some people can eat that and not have an issue, and then some people can eat that and then get sick as hell. So
Hmm.
I tell everybody our stuff is celiac safe, which is like the litmus test for how safe it really is. Those people are the most sensitive people. So if I'm not having any reaction to it, and again, I'll always back up my taste with the test and actually make sure that there's no gluten in there to make sure everybody feels safe.
Oh yeah, you're the guy in the ancient king's court who's tasting the food, make sure it's not poisoned. So
That's right. If anybody's
yes,
going first, it's me.
the good thing is that person gets to drink the beer first or eat the food first. It's yeah, a small consolation prize for the job.
It is fun to see it along the way because there are times where it's a process, and sometimes when you have it very early on, day one post fermentation, it's still 70 degrees the beer, and you're dropping it to 32, and it has yeast particles in there, and you're drinking it, and you're kind of like you want to see how where it's going and how it gets there, because this way you step by step. If something is awry, you'll catch it early enough where maybe you can do something to fix it or change it or to make it more palatable.
Or set it aside for you and the boys next time there's a party. Yeah.
That's right.
Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah. Is there anything that surprised you about opening a brewery? Something that you're like, oh, I did not see that.
I definitely, well, so we got started during COVID, which
Rough
prior to
time.
COVID, like
Rough time.
right prior
Yeah.
to COVID. So that was like a slap of cold water because it was roadblock after roadblock, challenge over challenge. Like we were overcoming things that seasoned brewers, they went out of business. Breweries that were in 8 to 10 years went out of business.
Hmm.
Even today, with now the downswing of the industry, a lot of my colleagues are closing up shop left and right. Biggest thing was the change of focus. So when I got into this business, I got into it for the beer. Like I had this gross assumption that I would be slinging beer and that would be my thing. I would come up with recipes and then I would serve it. And that was what I thought the business was. And lo and behold, now I find myself to be more of an event coordinator than anything else. So if you're not consistently having events and good events, memorable events, or what you would refer to as, let's say, an experience. If you're not creating the right experience for your customer, it doesn't matter what you're serving and it doesn't matter how good it is. I mean, to be frank, Chick-fil-A is now having events.
Hmm.
So that has to tell you something.
Yeah. Well, they're only open 6 days a week, so they've got to make up for it somewhere.
Oh, yeah, you got to make it up somehow.
Have you ever read that E-Myth?
No.
Oh, it's right up the alley of what you're talking about. It's the E stands for
Okay.
the entrepreneur myth. Starts with a story about a lady, if I remember correctly, opening a bakery, and she loves baking, and so she thinks that this is going to be the way I'm going to follow my passion. I'm going to bake, and as the story goes on, the one thing that she certainly does less and less of is bake, because the more successful, the further away she gets from the product, and the more she is managing the store versus doing what she loved. It's like, you thought
Right.
you were going to brew, but no, you're going to be an events manager. Also, there's this one quote in the Oxford Companion to Beer that I always think about. It's a throwaway line, but it stuck with me. Where it's on that section in distribution, and it's one of the few times where it gets from technical to like poetic, and it says, "Woe be to the brewer who underestimates how difficult it is to get your beers to the public." Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Ironically, that's so true. So when we were shopping for properties to lease, we had the age-old question of, do you want to go in a populated area and pay more rent, or do you want to go to a warehouse area, pay less rent, but then have to, drive the business further in regards to the tap room, and then worry about distribution more so because that's pretty much, if you're in a warehouse, the driving force. So we decided to do a tap room model, and we had like a little to-go area that we had designed, again, assuming we were trying to get open during the COVID crisis, but that didn't pan for us. We wound up opening in late October 22. It really did we took a little bit of a beating trying to get it going. But you're absolutely right. When it comes to that, it was, I said, you know what, if we're going to be at least think about it like a Main Street USA. So we've got 27 bars and restaurants on the block, and it's great because then I didn't have to have a kitchen. I don't have to worry about food because you're welcome to bring in food from
Yeah.
anywhere of the neighboring
Yeah,
businesses,
they're
which I
right
thought they
there.
would
That's
like too.
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the plan, and it worked out for the most part. You get a lot of that walk-in traffic, especially across the street from us is this diner, and very big on brunch. The weekend, there's about 40-minute wait for some of these tables over there. And lo and behold, everybody looks across the street. Now you can see them. They're like, "Oh, what do we do?" And then like, "What the hell is that thing? What's a necromantic?" And then they inevitably come in and hang out for a while.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's super cool. Yeah. It's interesting how much that dynamic plays out in other breweries too. I've always often wondered why I have to go to like the industrial parts of town to go to local brew places, but that makes a lot of sense. It's got to be cheaper. They've got to be more
Oh,
land.
affordability,
Yeah.
but goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. What kind of scale are you brewing on? How much beer do you produce in like a week or a month?
Right now, I have a 3.5 barrel system, which is pretty small, so they consider that almost like a nano brewery. So it depends on our foot traffic. If we have a busy time, I can pump out kegs like nobody's business. If it's a little bit slower, we're seasonal here. Not intentionally, I didn't think it was going to be a seasonal business. We're centrally located on Long Island, so I just thought that was going to be a good thing because we're literally center of the island. If you looked at an island of from Manhattan to Montauk, but start to finish, we're literally smack in the center. We're 2 3 minute train walk, so you can come from different places, and mass transit's a big thing over here. And so, yeah, there are times where the fall is our time, specifically because, again, the theme plays heavy. The horror movie theme, people love it. They think it's more of like
Yeah,
a
that makes a
Halloween
lot of
type
that makes
atmosphere,
a lot
even
of
though
sense. Yeah.
it's just movie theater posters and props and memorabilia. Like I don't have animatronics like popping out or anything like that, but still, people consider it more of a fall place, which is fine. So my fall numbers are very strong, especially when we start making the pumpkin beer. But yeah, no, I could probably pump out, man, on a good week, I could probably burn through 2 or 3 kegs. We have 10 lines.
Okay. Talking like full half barrel,
Not,
half kegs, the big
yeah,
guys.
half kegs.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's a decent size for sure. Have you ever encountered or have you thought about what you're gonna do when you need to brew more? Do you have the space to expand?
Yes.
No.
So I do not, and that's currently where we are today.
Okay.
So I'm looking at, and there's a physical location in upstate New York that's looking to contract brew specifically gluten-free beer. So this is a natural fit for us, and that's the way that we're going to wind up going. So if I do that, then it would be, let's say, a 40 barrel batch at a time, which would net me roughly 10,000 cans and 56 kegs. Uh, that would be more of the big time, big boy, make a play. The gluten-free market right now, the atmosphere has changed. I had said approximately 20 in the world, and a couple of them on the top end were either acquired by larger companies and now are no longer in existence, or have decided to change how they're going about it. So their shelf space now is available. I'm not looking to add to anything. I'm just looking to fill the gap of what was already there that is no longer. It's actually a funny thing you mention it because that's exactly what I'm looking at right now, meeting with different people and talking about what that would look like for us and how that would shake out. Because I'm gonna have to do a little bit. In New York, I'm allowed to do self-distribution.
Oh, that's
So
cool. That was gonna be something I was gonna ask.
I
Yeah.
want to, I want to start with that, and then eventually, hopefully, have too much to handle on my own, and then talk with a distributor. Because my experience in research and talking to other breweries is distributors tend to not like gluten-free products, which I can completely understand. But I always try to caution everybody before judgment. I've been open now going on 4 years, and I've had year over year growth. This last year we were steady, so I didn't lose. I'm a new business, but that's got to count for something. So if the product was an inferior product, as some people have been led to believe, just they automatically assume it's gluten free, so it can't taste as good. That's just not true. Because then I wouldn't be in business anymore. I would have already wrapped it up.
Yeah. Now, I'm thinking in my mind, it's analogous to the natural wine movement, especially the like extreme no sulfur wines. A lot of Psalms are
Yep.
turned off because, in all honesty, a lot of those bottles, if they're not well made, are bad. So it's a
Yeah.
shame because there are a ton of really talented, great winemakers who are doing great things with those products, but it's like you try one too many that tastes a little bit like a mouse, and you're like, oh no. Through no fault of your own, you're tied into the category.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. The fun thing for me is, as much as my focus and my plan will never stray from the gluten-free aspect of it, most of my customers, and I could throw a real strong number at you, 80+% are non-gluten free drinkers. So that means that they're just regular beer drinkers that enjoy a quality product, that enjoy my product specifically, and come in, and the repeat business is strong. We have a mug club. We have events through the mug club too. And it's not cheap. It's a $200 a year program, and we've got 50 plus people every year that can't wait
Sign
for,
up for
for
Mug Club.
renewals.
That's cool. Yeah, I think gluten free is getting a really like good boost from the health side of things. And like even the people that don't necessarily feel worse when they eat gluten, if you look at fast food, if you look at like processed foods, pretty much everything that's junk on the market has gluten. The things you want to avoid are stuffed with it. It's like an easy way to just kind of clean up your cooking and clean up your eating and just say, all right, I'm going to go gluten free. And that way you don't even have to think about it, you know?
It's so interesting to your point. It's Italy, right?
Mm-hmm.
From what we all know of Italian food, we can just the conversation is it's filled with wheat,
Yeah.
right? It's pasta, breads.
Yeah.
It's very wheat filled products, and so I always find it astounding that some of the people, customers that come in, they go, "Oh, safest place in the world for a celiac." I say, "Where is that?" And they say, "Italy." And I say, well, how is that even possible? And again, it has a lot to do with what you were saying about how the food is manufactured and things of that nature, because a lot of Italy, a lot of Italian food over there is farm to table. It's not processed. There aren't
Exactly,
things
yeah.
that preservative wise are in there, or a lot of the GMOs that we use here are not necessarily allowed over there. So it's interesting to the point, right? Like, is it the gluten, or is it like what we're putting in our food that's causing this reaction within our bodies? because when somebody asks me, they'll say, "Oh, when you have gluten, what happens to you? Like, how bad can it be? Would you have a tummy ache?" And I'm like, "Well, actually, it messes with my brain. So, like, I get brain fog. I can't think clearly. I
Yeah.
stumble over my words. I stutter. I get dark thoughts. I get a rash on my arm, on the fold of my arm. Sometimes the pain was so great I couldn't get out of bed, and I have a good pain tolerance, mostly from this. So it's pretty bad if I can't get out of bed. Uh, and
Hmm.
yeah, everybody has a different set of symptoms that they get, but when it does come, it's like a hurricane, knocks you down.
Yeah, it says a lot too about our society, about our food, and how we're dealing with things that we don't even like register that after you eat you shouldn't feel like that. You like a lot of people are just like,
Right,
oh, post eating I feel a little sluggish and off.
right,
Like I've had good meals, and usually if I have stuff myself on good, healthful, nutritious food, I feel better, not worse afterwards. I definitely know that
right.
like post eating hangover of shitty food, like we've all been there, but
Yes,
yeah. How bad can you feel from gluten? Probably like you shouldn't feel bad from pretty much any food. So yeah.
you would
Hmm.
hope not.
Yeah. What is it like to open a brewery? Like I can only imagine there are a lot of regulations. I can only imagine that just jumping through hoops, especially during COVID, it's got to be a nightmare.
Challenges were we had to rezone because again, I decided to go with the retail space. So the retail space needed to be like a light industrial space. So the village had to approve that, and then you got to have some set of construction in there. Nothing is really going to be moving, especially if you had a warehouse. The laws stating how many people versus how many bathrooms. So for us over here was anything over 50 people requires two bathrooms. Which common sense to me, it does make sense. So we had to add another bathroom. The drainage, you had like sewers go a long way here. I don't know what your drainage is like. So the way Long Island is
Mm-hmm.
situated, if you go further east, we get septic tanks. If you're familiar with those, but
Okay,
basically
yeah.
that would be a whole different set of rules and regulations. So I chose Nassau County, which was just sewage system, which is great. I didn't have to worry about that. The funny thing about every industry is you get some proponents of it and then you get some critics, and the critics seem to always be able to drown out the proponents. And so there was a time being where people were claiming that breweries were poisoning literally the wells. Like the cleaning solutions are so strong and it's getting mixed with regular water at the end, it's getting refiltered, and we're poisoning everybody, or like it's crazy. And that's some of these places on the island, you would think they would know better than stuff like that. But so yeah, so there was that. I got, just for my own satisfaction, because we wound up purchasing the building. We tested the ground around us to make sure that there was no chemicals or anything in there. We have private water in the
Mm-hmm.
village. It's grade A water. So, and we boil everything obviously too, but it's pretty good. I'm never going to be that brewer that like tweaks like the chloride or the chlorine or like the water. I have a recipe and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to let the yeast and the grain do the work. I'm not going to finick with the water. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. It's just, as a brewer, that's me. I'm not ultra technical guy. I'm more of the guy that, like,
Okay.
you're making sauce, you put your finger in it and you're like, "Oh, okay, it needs a little more of this, a little more of that." I'm more with tastes and flavors and stuff like that. That's why if you read some of the reviews on the place or the products, the product has never been the subject of a critique. It's most people enjoy it very much.
Mm-hmm. Critiquing the service, like
No,
hours
no,
or
what it is, it's like
yeah.
every business has its challenges. So like a good one was we had a private parking lot in the back, and it's a very small lot. It fits about four cars, and so that's where my back door is. So if I get deliveries, there's a parking spot there that I can't park at. But other people that are on the block that are other local businesses wanted to use that lot because the building was vacant for 3 years before I got there. People just assumed that it was a
Mm,
public
now
lot,
you're using
but it was
it.
actually
Yeah.
private property. So now I started using it, and I was at first nice about it. And I was like, "Hey, listen, guys, I know you were using this lot, but now I have to use the lot. It's in my lease. I have this lot to use. And then people were just like, no, that's not true. It's part of the village. Nobody owns that. The village owns it. And I'm like, no, I have it in writing. Like I have a lot survey. I have it in my lease. Like it's ours. Yeah. So after 2 or 3 times of telling somebody not to park there, I warned them. I said, listen, the next time I'm going to just tow you. And so I had to. And so what do you think happened? Oh,
Mm.
within 5 or 10 minutes, now I've got 5 or 6 negative reviews on my business because she was pissed off I towed her car. She wrote a negative review. She got her friend to write a negative review and all this other stuff. And it was chronic and constant. And Google doesn't care. Google does not care.
Mm.
So I'm sitting there saying, like, this never even happened. And they're just like, sorry, we can't take it down. I was like, oh, you just gotta, you hope that the good outweighs the bad.
Yeah, it is pretty obvious when those little microbursts on people's uh, different Google pages. Like even my place had one. Yeah, I won't even go into it, but it's just like, are these 4 in a row 1-star reviews accurate? Like, which is tough because you also do have instances where people mess up, genuinely mess up. You have instances where people genuinely ashamed to speak up but feel courage at home and have the capacity to write. There are ones that are legitimate, but with that burst of like 4 in a row, yeah. But I don't know.
Can happen.
Speaking from one business to another.
Yeah, no, it's what it is.
What's
You
in
just
the future?
persevere.
Oh. What's in
So
the
right
future
now, I
for
just on
Necromantic?
distribution. Necromantic now is distribution. I believe the future for us is in distribution. Right now, our tap room is open Tuesday to Sunday. I think that that's a big ask in this type of environment. We do have events on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, which do. But if we scaled back some of the hours a little bit, maybe if we were just open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we can still run those events just on different days. And I think it would be just as effective, if not more effective, because later in the week people tend to go out a little more. And couple that with distribution, and that's part of the reason of doing some of these podcasts right now is getting the
Getting the
name
word
out
out.
there and creating awareness. And I would love to go nationwide with product. If we could go nationwide, then that would be the goal at this point. So start
Are,
small,
are
focus on New York and the Northeast.
yeah? Are you gonna own it throughout? Or is your plan to take it to the very end? Or
I do, yeah. No, I'm hoping to become more of a pest than anything else. Somebody looks at me and is like, "It'd be great if we just took this thing over and got them out of here." That would be great, and I think I would have fulfilled what my personal mission was, which was to change the way people think about here, about gluten free, about all these things. Like I'm of the belief that every restaurant everywhere could be gluten free. It's just simple substitutions. They just don't want to do it because why? Because things have been done a certain way for a certain amount of time. I can't tell you when I get purists in there and they're arguing with me about Germans and the German way of doing things and how my beer is not classified as real beer because it can't be by definition. And I'm like, listen, I'm not here to talk semantics. I'm talking about flavor and taste. If you're telling me that
yeah.
this is not a beer because it doesn't taste like a beer, I'll listen to you all day long. If you're telling me that this is a beer because I withheld an ingredient from it that I personally and others like me cannot tolerate, then I can't help you. Then what is
Mm.
craft beer if not doing something different? It's there's only so many styles in the world that you can come up with and making them the same ways. How many versions of an IPA can we continue to do? But we can do an IPA made with millet and quinoa, and now you have something different.
Yeah. So I see the whole line of thinking of their sides. It's like it was 1514 Reinheitsgebot with a beer could only be XYZ. And definitely that is the origin story of beer. But even looking back through history, we used to not have penicillin. Things change. It's not always a bad thing. And you don't get innovation if you just blindly follow the rules and the precepts of the past. You have to innovate and you have to try new things. And maybe maybe quinoa IPA isn't the thing that takes off, but maybe there's a millet wheat esque beer that captures the imagination of the public. If we don't try new
I
things,
agree.
then yeah, what are we gonna do?
Every once in a while, just got to switch it up.
If you could go back and talk to your younger self and see everything that happened, is there anything you would have done differently?
Ooh, that's a good one. I always go back and forth about when we started the business. So I started brewing in 2018, and then 2019 I was shopping for property. And so the economy was in a different place in 2019, obviously. And so it was interesting because landlords were much more picky on who they wanted in a space or not. So that was an interesting time trying to convince them about letting me start a brewery in a non-traditional space, in other words, more of a retail space location. And so I remember pushing like, oh, we got to get this done. We got to sign a lease. We got to find a place. Maybe I always go back and forth with myself and say, what if I had more patience, or if I didn't feel like it was a real, do it or die situation, be a little more thought put behind it in the sense of, okay, there's a possibility of a pandemic, which we heard about. I just didn't buy into that the whole world would shut down because I figured it's never been done in the history of the existence that we shut down economies in totality. So
Hmm.
I just
Well,
didn't think that it would
surprise. Yeah.
happen, and I bet against it. Yeah, surprise, totally lost that bet. But yeah, so I do go back and forth with that. Maybe we'd be in a stronger financial position now if we would have waited on it because more spaces would have became available. I could have bought different types of equipment. I was always on the fence with the equipment too. Like I was of the belief it's got to be brand new because I want to maintain the integrity of gluten free. I don't want to have cross contamination within the equipment, even if I can sanitize it 1,000 times. It's just my whole shtick of the business is keeping people safe. I just never wanted to
Yeah.
attempt to cut a corner to save some cash, and then one person gets sick and you're out of business. But those are the questions. If I had to tell myself again, did you make the right call with not getting used equipment for a quarter of the price? Or did you make the right call pushing the business through when all these challenges and roadblocks came through? But ultimately, I do believe I made the right decisions. I do.
Yeah. No, it's hard because you can't split test life, but you have to wonder too, had you waited and started looking, say, in the pandemic, wonder if seeing everything shut down, there would have been more of a fear based relationship to things. Maybe signing on before propelled you forward during the pandemic, whereas you might have been more cautious. I could see a world where you taking the leap before the world shuts down locks you in to continue to do the thing to actually make it through the pandemic. But that's my way of
Yeah, it
saying,
was a shame that we
yeah.
didn't start lease negotiations until January of that year. And so we signed on March 20th, and that was the Friday before New York decided to shut down. Sunday, the 22nd, I believe, everything shut down, and then we were off to I would say off to the races, but we never even got into the starting gate. So
Mm,
that was kind of what happened. But hey, listen, like I said, we're stronger for it. I could tell you as a business owner, I definitely things pop up now. I don't panic as much. It does, even if it's paralyzing. Like I've had the machine break on several instances, which has caused delays, and we've run out of beer before, and all this stuff. And it's maybe if I didn't have the craziness of COVID, it would have affected me mentally more. Oh my God, what do we do? Here, it's like it's another bump in the road. Like we figured it out then, we'll
yeah,
figure it out now.
the world literally shut down and we were fine. It all worked out.
Right.
Yeah. Someone listening at home, where could they go to find out more about you and the beers you brew? Where could they go to see you?
Sure. So we're heavy into social media. So Instagram, Facebook, at Necromantic Brew Co., mostly all one word. We're working on a website to get that finalized because I know, listen, websites are paramount because you can't trust social media to be there tomorrow. You never know. Pages
Mm-hmm.
get shadow banned and stolen all the time. That actually did happen to our Facebook page a couple of years ago. Somebody from India hacked it and took it, and we were able to get it back, but it was gone for a couple of months. So definitely want to get that website up and running. So it will be www.necromanticbrewco.com, and that should be ready within, I'd say, the next month. But yeah, events are posted weekly now on our Instagram and our Facebook page. We used to do a monthly calendar, but I think the weekly seems to be a little more effective with driving traffic into the place.
Yeah, I mean, I just maybe my life is a little unplanned in my free time, but I don't often plan to go to a brewery 3 weeks from now. Like, but the week of, you're
Right,
like, hey, what are you doing? There's this thing. Let's check it out.
exactly.
That sounds cool. Yeah, for sure. Okay, I will have everything that we just mentioned there in the show notes for those of you who are listening. Didn't have something to write it down with, just to make it easy to click over and check out Instagram and all the fun stuff they have on Facebook. And whenever the website comes, I'll update with the website. Ralph, is there anything that we didn't cover today that you'd be sad we missed before we go?
No, it was a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time and asking such great questions, and it was really a lot of fun.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah, cheers. It was cool talking to you. And my brother is a big brewer. He started with mead, and now he does traditional gluten beer. But definitely,
That's
I
awesome.
respect the brewing company. I respect the brewing people because I feel like some of the nicest people in the world are brewers. So super cool.
I appreciate that.